name is Amelie. You're watching the Celestic Intelligence podcast. I'm just spitting freely today because, well, one, I can, and two, I was live a couple days ago and we were chatting about the skeletons and the bones in the body and how that is part of our network of how we magnetize things in because there's calcium and phosphate crystal that makes up our bones that helps to draw in minerals to replace the lattice that it is. It's almost like these bones also are kind of this archive or something that is keeping a record in it. And so when I was researching this, the next thing that popped into my mind as I'm researching it is the sacrament or the communion when Jesus was doing the Last Supper. It was a big moment. And he said that he was the bread and the blood, right? And so we're talking about blood. We're talking about the goings on, the internal goings on of the human and the body intelligence that we have. And so I was curious of, when Jesus said that eat this bread, it is my flesh, drink this blood, it is, it is like a covenant. You're keeping a covenant. And then also the eating of the bread is almost like the eating of the bones. And the reason why it always fascinated me. So I don't even know how I came across it, but I was reading up on the French Revolution a couple years ago. And I think part of it was my fascination with the destruction of Jerusalem. The destruction of Jerusalem was a very fascinating story. It was quite an epic. The temple that was destroyed, the Jerusalem temple that was destroyed, by all means should not have been broken, but it was. And so when I was learning about the French Revolution, I also learned about, hello, Mohammed Gamer. When I was learning about the French Revolution, some similar things were happening in the French Revolution that was happening in the destruction of Jerusalem. So in the French Revolution, everyone was like, paupers, they were starving, and they ended up going and exhuming the graves nearby and taking the bones out and crushing them down to make bread. So, literally in history, and this is probably not the only time that it has happened, but literally in history, they're taking bones and making bread out of it. And you're going to say that's disgusting, but it was a common practice back at that time. Hi, AXO. I'm doing well. I have 38% on my device here, and I'm going to talk about bread and bones today. Um, so it's not the only time that it has happened. One of the other stories that it reminds me of is Jack and the Beanstalk. If you guys know Jack and the Beanstalk, Jack, got some. He made a he made quite the transaction by trading their last meager cow in for some magic beans, and it created this beanstalk. And he went up and it took him to the giant's house. But the thing that the giant said is he could smell the blood of an Englishman, and if he was alive or dead, he was going to grind his bones to make his bread. So this is inserted into the stories as well. And so, I'm asking if back in early century times or even before that, it is normal for people to take the bones, grind it down, and put it into food as an additive. Then let's really look at what is bread and blood sacrament. Is it really a bones? Were bones included into that? Is this like an analogy? Not saying that it is. It's totally a theory, but I'm just curious on the thought process here, right? Bone meal is still even used today. If you get bone meal, if you're a gardener, you get bone meal and you put it into your garden for an extra calcium hit. It's made out of calcium phosphate, and so it's a normal thing to have that bone meal in there. It is also used as a flour extender, so that is also what it was used for. So bread could literally carry the memory of bones because remember last in my digital age series I was talking about how skeletons or the bones of our bodies are what holds the archives of our memories. It even drags in the isotopes of where you live or where you have lived or even your ancestors have lived. So, in a physical sense, bread could literally carry the memory of bones and of ancestry and of the dead returned to nourish the living. Why are you white? That's a wild take. I know. It is a wild take. It's very crazy. Why am I white? Um, well, I guess my family, my ancestry. And then bones themselves are calcium phosphate, like I mentioned, which is a mineralized earth. So it is like having this stone like archive inside your flesh. Um, your skeleton. Hi. You like turtles, Tyler? I like turtles. They're very old, they have a lot of wisdom in them. Um, So if you're eating bread that has ground bone in it, it's almost like eating memories, right? Taking yourself taking into yourself the record of those who came before. So if you're doing a sacrament and you're eating the bread of Jesus, you're literally doing a ritual sacrament where you're taking in that memory into your own body. Yes, this is a little bit of a wild theory. I'm just what ifing over here, so don't mind me. This is how my brain works, and I'm not apologizing for it. So that's the bread and bones analogy. And then the blood, obviously, the blood is this covenant. Blood in Hebrew was thought of as a life force. The life is in the blood. And when Jesus says his blood is drink, he's saying the life itself, the covenant itself, the spirit in itself is being poured out in that ritual practice of doing that. So if we're looking at this from a grander insight, and this is totally a what if. This is not like I'm saying that this is a claim I'm standing on. This is just what if theories that play out in my head and I've been working on I've been working on analyzing the analog to digital switch, and so this is where my brain goes. But if we align this with what I'm asking, it's the bread is body, bones, ancestry, memory. This is my body broken for you. Jesus becomes this story keeper in a sense, the archive of all human suffering and of redemption. And so his bones become the bread of continuity of those records. So when you take that in, you're taking in those records into your body. And the same thing goes with the blood. It's a life force, it's a spirit, it's a covenant. Instead of memory or ancestry, it's a covenant. And then this is my blood poured out becomes the river of life or this circulation of divinity within yourself because it's that continuous life force. Because blood circulates, right? Right. Um, so there's not just this wheat and wine ritual that the communion is or the sacrament is. Um, there's a little bit of truth that goes into this as well. Hi, Mike. Good to see you. Ahmed, hello. I don't know who all is still here, but thank you guys for joining. I'm just messing around for a little while. Felt like going live. I was doing some recordings and I was like, I just better go on live and do some stuff. If you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe if you have not done so yet. Okay, so, looking at the cosmic truth, the bread and bones and structure, archive and body of earth, the blood, spirit, and flow, the covenant, the river of heaven. So you got body of earth, river of heaven, and they're both combining together. So taken together, essentially the sacrament, the Last Supper, was saying, I am both the archive and the flow, the memory and the vitality, the bones and the breath. I am the living toolkit incarnate. I don't know if this is, I'm going a little outside of, norm, but I'm just looking at that. Like, is this a truth that could be held in this? Right? Okay. Um, so let's look at some myths where the bones is bread were themes in them. So Jack and the Beanstalk, fee fi fo fum is what the giant says when he's threatening to grind Jack's bones to make his bread. This reveals an archetype of power consuming the essence. Okay, so bones equal life memory, and bread is nourishment and continuity. But that's the essence. Like the giant is eating the essence of that. Now, in the French Revolution, they made bone bread. This is not in Minecraft. This is in the French Revolution during the late 1700s. There was a famine in the land, and bones were actually exhumed from graveyards and were ground and mixed into flour to make bread. Symbolically, people during that time were forced to eat the ancestral remains to survive. The revolution was consuming its own roots. That's why I don't really like to say revolution. It hasn't, like, after reading that, I was just like, oh my gosh, don't eat that. But it was this revolution was basically like turning around and then it started eating itself. Whereas revelation is jumping outside of a revolution. So when I think of a revolution, I think of a circle going around and around and around, and that's exactly what was happening. The people symbolically were consuming their own roots, consuming their own bones that were being exhumed from graveyards in order to make bread. So I like to say revelation because it's like, it sounds like we're going somewhere and we're not going in a loop. All right, let's talk a little bit more. So Grimm's fairy tales, the Brothers Grimm, they had a couple stories. So Hansel and Gretel, the witch was fattening the children to consume them and baking them in an oven. And while this is not bone bread specifically, it's about turning the body into bread into consumption. You love the new sigil? Isn't it cool? Oh my gosh, it's really exciting. Maybe I'll chat about it in a little bit. And then there's another story in the Grimm's fairy tales called the Juniper Tree, which a boy is killed, cooked into a stew, served to his father, and only the bones remain, which then sing. So bones in the Juniper Tree are still holding this indestructible memory or song in this story, even after the flesh is eaten, even after the flesh is gone. The bones still hold a memory. In Greek mythology, Cronus devours his own children, and the bones or essence is recycled back into him when he does that. The Greek myths are weird, but they're there, right? And then the other Greek mythology, which I do chat about Persephone, but Demeter and Persephone, grains or bread are tied to the cycles of death and rebirth. Even though it's not bone grinding, it's about eating mortality and regeneration there. In Norse mythology, we have Thor's goats could be eaten, but if their bones were kept whole, the goats would resurrect by the morning. So that one's an interesting one. Eating the flesh is fine, but the bones are considered sacred. They store life force and resurrection power in the bones. And then in indigenous and shamanic traditions, many tribes, including some North American tribes, practice bone keeping rituals, believing that the soul or the memory lives in the bones. So there's almost this like unseen wisdom that in the bones is memory, or there's something stored within them. And so grinding or breaking bones could release ancestral knowledge or power. And it was in the Old Testament that none of Jesus's bones, like none of the Savior's bones, would be broken. So that was important as far as one of the tells of what would come up. And then, all right. Oh, we're gonna talk about that. Jump the gun. So in some Bible stories, Ezekiel, the Valley of Dry Bones, bones are archives of Israel, awaiting the breath of God to live again. Okay, and then in Psalm 34 is the Old Testament. He keeps all his bones, not one of them broken. So bones are sacred vessels that should remain intact, except in Eucharistic reinterpretation, where bread or the body is broken and shared, right? So in Psalms, it's he keeps all his bones and none of them are broken, but when it comes to the sacrament, the bread is broken. And I think that it is, I believe, could it be? I'm not making claims here, but that the bread sacrament has to do with bones, has to do with memory. So when you take that in, you're taking in that memory of it. Okay, so the archetypal meaning across all cultures, bones are typically equated to memory, archive, indestructible essence, and bread is transformation into sustenance, communion, or continuity. So grinding bones symbolizes turning memory and mortality into nourishment. Sometimes it's sacred and sometimes it's violent, as we've kind of gone over some of these stories here. So when we look at that, I'm coming from this digital age lens of what is tech up to? What is tech? What is what is this end game that we're getting to? But they're doing the same thing. So they're grinding the ancestral bones of Earth in the rare earth elements, the archives, the memories, the stories that live in, the areas that are being mined. When they take that rare earth element out of there and they're putting it into the digital bread, which is like devices or even algorithms or AI models, brain computer interfaces that we were talking about the other day. And so it's kind of an interesting take. It's a little bit of a reach, but it's a fun one. That's why I'm not like putting this in the digital age, but I did want to talk about it. And then some other interesting bone things. And if you guys, is that not cannibalism? I mean, who's my favorite singer? Who's my favorite singer? Probably Freddie Mercury, Brie. I like Freddie Mercury. I love Queen. It's my fave. But let's talk about the catacombs because I thought that that was an interesting thing. I think grinding human bones, there's definitely something distasteful about it, Mike. There is definitely something distasteful about it. I don't know that I would do it, but it's not, it's to be said that it has, like, I can't even say that it hasn't been done because it has. Um, in Paris, there are catacombs, and there's just tons of these bones stacked underneath the city. Okay. And so I think that there's a little bit of mystery around why they're there. Um, but they're kind of like this underground library, right? If you think about like going in there and seeing all the bones, there is an essence that you can feel. And they are crystal, right? Because they're made out of calcium and phosphate. So it's like this interesting space, not quite in the city, but not quite underneath the dirt. And so you have this really eclectic collection or archive of humanity in that city. So, like, rare earth elements or crystals are stored in the earth until they're mined. The catacombs are storing bones beneath the cities, and it holds a record of the people who live there. Okay. So collecting the bones in this way is obviously interesting, but it's also like collecting a story of the history of the people in the mineralized form. Um, so archetypally, resonance with the sacred space, the Parisian catacombs are not just practical, but they're now this ritual space that people can enter and remember certain events, right? So, what usually happens is you're arranging skulls and femurs into different patterns. So, already the bones have this lattice pattern in them, but now they're taking actual bones and they're putting into an aesthetic, um, what might be known as like a liminal altar. And that's kind of coding the liminal space with those memories of those individuals. So the bones beneath the city become this hidden foundation and kind of this reminder of the history of the city. So in Paris, those bones are a reminder of the history of what's gone on in the city. So it's almost like stacking stones in a sense. And then liminal is, you know, this in between space of life and death, and or, you know, above and below. So it's a threshold. So the catacombs are literally liminal zones between these two things. Could also include history and the present. The catacombs are kind of representing that liminal space as well. So entering these places is like descending into the underworld and just being in that vibration, being in that what is happening within that and getting that essence of it is like retrieving a bit of wisdom from what has gone on in the past. And then being able to do that, just like the ritual of being able to go into these underground liminal spaces, is mirroring the mythic descent. So, you know, Mike was talking about my new sigil, great song Liminal by Chelsea Wolfe. I haven't heard that. Sounds interesting. Um, but when you're, you know, when I'm putting together my sigil today, a big part of, I mean, I have a Vesica Pisces in there. So there's like this womb area, um, which is the, what's it called? It starts with an M. Oh my gosh. Anyways, it's that almond shape in between the two circles. that's the womb space. That's the above and below meeting together and creating this womb space. It's like the earth that we're in right now is like this. We typically align it with this, like, heaven above, underworld below. So when you're in these liminal spaces, these threshold spaces, you get a little bit of that mythic descent vibe of being there. So it's kind of like Inanna going to the underworld and having to, like, when I created that sigil, it was like this story of Inanna, the Queen of Heaven, a Sumerian Queen of Heaven, was like there, right? That's what I'm thinking about, is how much that I've had to shed, the generational trauma codes, the ego as an attachment to, whatever the thing is, my pride as a shield to protect me from whatever. And I've had to, like, let go of expectation, and I've had to look at survival in a different way. I love you so much. Oh, you're so sweet. Emmanuel. Um, but when I'm doing that, I'm looking at, like, I counted nine different things. Let me see if I can find it. Um, yeah. So I talked about trauma codes, ego attachments, and the pride. But, other things that lie below that. Who's my favorite singer? Oh, I said Freddie Mercury from Queen. Um, some of the other things that I had to shed in between that. You're welcome. Let me change to call you. Okay. I. All right. Um, so false loyalty was one of the things that I had to I had to untether, that I had to, like, let go of. And what does that mean? It's like, because I was raised in a situation where I had to feel that I felt a little alone and isolated as a child, which is fine. Like, I'm okay with it now. And I didn't really mind then either. I really like my alone time still. But false loyalty will look like you give your devotion to something and it takes your essence. So I think of, poor relationships that I were in, that I had. It was like this false exchange of energy, like this false loyalty. If I'm around you, you're going to protect me, and then you can just use my essence. And, a lot of that, I like to think of the dark crystal. In the dark crystal, the Skeksis, they take the living and they, like, suck out their essence, right? That's the dark crystal. And so false loyalty isn't necessarily, it doesn't mean betraying others, but it means that you've betrayed yourself. So when you're burning false loyalty, you're really burning a betrayal that you've been doing to yourself, this self abandonment that you've done to yourself. And so that was one of the things that I had to burn in creating, like, as this sigil represents, like, I had to burn that. Another thing I had to burn was this hustle culture urgency addiction that I had, right? So I was trained that, no, like, whatever I did, the things that I provided, that was my value. Instead of looking at my own internal value and knowing that I'm pretty damn valuable. I'm kind of fun and awesome. I don't have to hustle, and I don't need to have the biggest output. I don't need to have all these huge. This is something that our culture in America has, like, taught us, that It's what you create independently, you, instead of really looking at what that independence might be. Thank you. You're so awesome, Mike. Mike really is my number one fan, everybody listening and watching. He's always here. But the urgency addiction is also being needed. You need me. So you're always having to do something. You can't sit still without having guilt or shame. It's always this urgency. Like there's always something else to do instead of being able to rest. I binge watched all of Emily in Paris on Netflix. It's not humiliating, but you know what? It's a thing. I did that. And the thing that I learned is, Emily is an American. She's just work, work, work. And the culture in France is like, if you're at a party, you don't talk about work. If you're on holiday, you don't talk about work. If it's not work time, if not the work hours, you're not working. So you don't talk about work. They honor their rest period. They honor their meals together. They honor the champagne that they have at the end of the day or celebrating a thing and their wine. They appreciate that time. They don't talk about work. They don't bitch about work. They don't talk about any of that. It's just connection, connection, connection. So they've maintained it's completely different over there. Yeah, I'm like, dude, I want to go just to get some of that interdependence that they have, like a little bit more interdependence, meaning that so there's independence, which is very much an American thing, and I love my independence, don't get me wrong, but the interdependence of the European countries, there's something really beautiful about it. And I think that's kind of what people are yearning for here when they're like, oh, we should be more like X country because X country does this for their people. When really what we're asking for is we want a little bit more interdependence. We want a little bit more community orientation. And we're living not just in America, but in society as a whole. Hi, Babu. Welcome. Good to see you again. I didn't get any more water. I'm going to shrivel up. I drink like 4 of those a day, by the way. I think it's a gallon. It's a quart. 4 quarts make a gallon. I don't know. But yeah, the urgency addiction, I had to like get rid of that. And I think, really, as I'm watching this and I'm looking at it with new eyes, like looking at other cultures and how other cultures manage their connections with each other, it really is about blending independence with interdependence and really having this healthy harmony between the two. I don't remember what I said that was funny, Mike. All right. Um, the next thing that I had to burn as I'm like building this sigil, becoming the midwife of a new order, and going through some really fucking hellish initiations, pardon my French. Some really hellish initiations that I think would break most people. And I've managed to maintain positivity, managed to maintain my brain, didn't break me. And not all of it is bad. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of death, but then there's also like a spiritual awakening that could have very well like knocked me into an impractical part. I think sometimes when people go through, it's almost like I don't know if you guys are young enough or old enough to remember back in the day, but when I was in my teens, we had acid. And I took acid one time and I was like, I don't know if I really want to. Forgate, why you forgate me? Um, I haven't forgotten you. Did you ask me a question? But back in the day, we had we had acid, and I took acid once, and I didn't really much care for it. I preferred mushrooms, but took acid. And I remember the stories that would go around with the people that were taking acid. And this is why I hold what I hold for people that kind of like lose their minds. This is why I think the way I do. But there were people that were dealing acid, and there were people that would take acid, like a ton of it, right? And they were just these little blots on paper, little squares that you just put in your mouth. And they would say, oh, yeah, this person took so much acid that they were never the same again, right? They're just like stuck in this permanent world. This talk about a liminal space, right? They're stuck in this permanent world. This metaverse is what I would call it today, and they're never gonna be right again. They have to be taken care of for the rest of their life, and so you would hear stories like this come around. Um, I can't remember why I was telling that story, but um, when we're working on, oh, I would know, right? I've been through quite a bit. So when I think about like MK Ultra or aversion therapy, or even people taking an overdosing on like acid. Hi, Emmanuel. Um, like a lot of the things that I've been through this year are represented in that sigil of losing people, losing part of my identity, changing professions, and going through some really, really difficult things. I did name this the year of refinement, and the process of refining either silver or even copper, maybe even gold, but refining silver is very much described in the Bible. And it goes through a really high temperature, and the person that is managing heating up the silver has to watch it, because if they don't manage it properly, if they don't manage it properly, the whole thing can turn and you just lose all the silver. So it has to be watched. It has to be at a certain temperature. It's burning away all of this other stuff in order to get to that 999 purity. So it has to be monitored. Like it has to be watched. It's not something that AI can just go and watch it. I don't know, maybe they can, but there's likely going to be a human doing that at all times. Okay, so we talked about that. The next thing was inherited silence. So, not truth telling. And it doesn't matter if you're whoever you are, if you're not telling the truth. Which do you prefer, silver or gold? I mean, I'm going to turn down either of them. When I was younger, I preferred silver, but now that I'm older, I prefer gold. I don't know why it changed, but it did. Um, but we have whole generations of women and men who didn't say anything, right? They didn't say anything because they didn't want everything to collapse. So, because of that, the silence meant that if you did that, it was like the revelation was coming out, right? The revelation was coming out. And so this isn't just us speaking, but it's us speaking what others are forbidding us to say. Okay, so there's this inherited silence, because if you said something, you would get banished. If you said something, you would get kicked out. And we still hold that in our systems. And I'm here to say, like, we live in a society where it's okay to say things. It's okay to say the truth. It's okay to speak out and speak for yourself. The other thing I had to get rid of was a distorted humility, right? There's a version of humility that is really like erasure. There's a false humility in that. So self eraser is going to look like don't shine too bright, because if you shine too bright, they're going to get noticed. Don't be too much. Don't take up space. Don't be big. Don't be loud. And this is a real odd place of humility. It's false because if you had to burn so you can carry the real humility, that kind bows before the mystery without denying its own radiance. Okay? A couple other ones is, I had to get rid of this idea of love as a transaction, and it kind of goes hand in hand with that false loyalty of if I'm devoted to you, if I'm giving you my loyalty, then you can take my essence as well. And so that also goes into this space of the survival love. And how many people do we know on survival love right now? I mean, like most people are. I think most people are on survival love. If your system is dysregulated and you're getting together with somebody else, and you haven't cleaned up your system, like you're matching with somebody that's on like a timeline that you may not even want to stay on. I think that's why some people will be like, I'm just gonna like work on myself for a while, because they need that time to actually learn who they are and refine who they are before they, step into another relationship. And by doing that, they might go through some people, but in the end, like, most of the time, if you're on a schedule of personal mastery, you're not going to be like even engaging in that. It's not even going to be a thought. You're just thinking about how do I get to my next level. But sometimes you have to invite people into your world in order to stir things up in you, because we can stagnate as well. But the love as a transaction, as a form of appeasement, as a possession, as a martyrdom, we can lay down our love at the altar and watch it get burned. Maybe it's one of those burning altars. But these love scripts are everywhere. I mean, we have tons and tons of people that are on dating sites that are looking for love and they're not connecting with it, and then they're frustrated. That's a survival love script. So you've got to burn those to leave room for love as reciprocity and co regulation. Okay. And then finally, the secondhand dreams is the last one. So this is like your ambitions and your values that you carried because of culture or your family or your peers projected them onto you. Um, the secondhand dreams are like not your dreams. It's not anything that you want. You're just doing it almost as an appeasement to your family, or maybe because culture tells you that this is the way that you need to do it, or even peers. Like it could be a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you're going into college because they're going into college. It could be peers that are ambitious about going and fulfilling a certain something. But when you go through the fire of refinement of that, you're really looking at what are my dreams? What is my soul blueprint? Am I operating in the blueprint that I want to be operating in, or am I following somebody else's blueprint? This happens in the coaching sphere all the time. I see it all the time. In fact, one of the people that is a little bit of my muse in creating nervous system first leadership was an acquaintance who spent thousands of dollars on taking coaching programs. And the coach was like, "You take this program, we're going to get you that you're going to be here. You're going to be making 20, 30, $50,000 months if you follow all the things in my program." And she was struggling to make anything. And this is not uncommon. So, really just burning down of, am I following that coach's dream? Are they convincing me that their blueprint is my blueprint? And is it really my blueprint? Do I really want their energy? Do I really want to pay for their energy? And that's what you got to look at. I'm not going to work with just anybody. Like, I'm going to only work with people that like want to work with me and I feel in alignment of working with them, right? I want the potent people. I want the people that are freaking serious about making changes, of ending toxic workplace culture, of correcting these exclusive things. Good thing you're the truth. Well, I'm speaking a source of truth. But I'm just telling you what I see. And I understand the energy. I understand the energy. It hasn't been easy for me to understand it, but I understand it very deeply now. If you buy from somebody and they're dysregulated, you're buying their dysregulation. I don't care if it's, mom and pop down the street or if it's Walmart or Amazon or fill in big company, Starbucks. Maybe it's even Instacart. You're buying everything through Instacart. You're just gonna have your driver go out and get you your things. There, like all that dysregulation of the transfer of money from one place to another, that flows, man. That flows, and it sits in your system. And some of it's easy to get rid of, but some of it is not. Some of it is not. I had, I had a gentleman. We're both human design reflectors, and he reached out to me, and we were chatting. And he was just like, "Oh my gosh." I'm like, "Yes, this is my whole, like, oh my gosh, is right. That's my whole year." And he observed and he was like, are you sensing the same thing from the coaching in people that are out there? Like, what do you mean? It's like there's something off about it. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I see it all the time. I see it all the time. That's why I developed my program. My friend or my acquaintance that I had spent, well over $15,000 on coaches on these methods that would get her the perfect website, the perfect program, the perfect this, perfect that. Dude, no, none of them stuck for her. In fact, she had 6 months to figure a thing out, and she couldn't even hold that. So I'm here to say, like, it's the nervous system is unable to hold it. It creates the leaks. Pure and simple. No joke. All right. Do we want to talk about bones a little bit more? Let me see if I can find my bone talk. I kind of got. Maybe I'll talk about my sigil. Let me see if I finished my thing. Oh, yeah. I have one more thing about the catacombs and the bones that are in there. So we were talking about the mythic descent, and that just got me on a whole rabbit trail of my sigil. Sorry, Mike. Or good. But the ones that are not consumed but are still potent. So, unlike the bone bread, the catacombs are not metabolized physically but metabolized symbolically by culture. So, this is a place where people go and visit and sit in that liminal space and get some of that resonance and frequency that's going on in those spaces. And they carry a little bit of like this haunted, quiet pressure because they do have, like, crystals have these vibrations that go out. So their presence shapes the psychic atmosphere of the living. And so people sometimes speak of Paris as not only this like radiant city, but also this shadow city. So you have this beautiful blend of the two, the radiance and this shadow energy in Paris. And I think that's why people like fall in love because it's almost like this balanced harmony that you're tapping into. Okay, I haven't seen Tim, so I won't talk about the substances in the sky, but I did look into that a little bit. All right. I think that's going to be it for today. Unless you guys have any questions, feel free. But let me just, before we get too far, see if I can find my post here. So if you guys are not following me on Substack, that's fun. He was talking about chemtrails. I don't know. It's so silly how people. Oh, Tim is here. Hi, Tim. Were you lurking? Okay. So I did want to talk about those substances because it did have a little bit to do. Um, did you not go to the festival, Tim? Okay, so um, obviously, allegedly, because I don't know if YouTube allows you to talk about it, but um, some people even said, "Oh, just call it the internet." I'm like, do we have to do these like? Do we have to do these like talk arounds? Do we really have to? But so in the substances that are in it is aluminum oxide or aluminum, barium salts, which do affect. No, but I will be at the Midwest Bear Fest. Oh, okay. I went to the first one. Then we have strontium and polymer fibers or nanofibers, and there's some other metals or heavy elements detected: cadmium, chromium, nickel, lead, arsenic, and even trace pathogens. And some reports even cadmium sulfide or ethylene dibromide, which were previously. Hi, Tyler. Oh my gosh. Look at everybody's here, the whole gang. How cool. Um, which were used in cloud seeding or as insecticides. So I asked, like, what is the magnetic? I'm doing well. How are you? It's been a minute. I posted on Substack today. Beer Fest, you say? I had a I had a good day. I created I um, actually made my own graphic of my sigil, so that was really exciting. So you'll see a new sigil being used, and I think I got a lot of my website done. So there's several web pages that are like almost ready to go. I've been getting my pre-order for my book, The $8 Truth, ready. Yeah, it's if you go to Substack, it's my latest article. And then I think I changed it on YouTube, so it should also be there as well. Aren't you on it? I think there is a link in my post on YouTube, my last post. And then the magnetic or energetic resonance of these elements are conductive and interact magnetically at a particular particulate level and are similar, the same elements which are used for magnets, chips, and sensors. So there is a little bit of the same resonance as far as the magnetic and energetic resonance. And then the bioaccumulation of these metals are also the same. They can go through airways, and if they go through the airways, they can, yeah, it's the white symbol. Yeah. It's the white symbol of the Vesica Pisces. Um, but if you're breathing them in, it's similar on how rare earth elements can bind to the human skeletal structure. So it's still being taken in. I love the bats. I know, my bats are so cute. They're always there, Tyler, unless I'm not in location. Okay. And this echoes what we've been talking about as the bones. The bones are the earth into tech, but this time they're aerosolizing them into the body instead of them being worn. You've never seen the bats before, they've been there. So, air is meant to be divine. You know, we're talking about the bones being this archival memory. Can you send me? I gave them all. No, I can't give you my bats. I do have quite a bit of them. All my bats. um, but the air is meant for divine breath, right? And then we have that soil memory. We're talking about bones or skeletons holding memory as well. The earth is holding memory. And we're talking about the blood. The blood is the covenant, it's carrying that covenant through your body. You're my friend, it's okay to share. um, but really, what it's doing is if chemtrails are real, I got them, I think I got them on Shein. It was the only place I could find. So they used to have this, oh my gosh, what was it called? Shopko? Have you ever been to a Shopko? Um, so symbolic, this is a symbolic corruption of our body as a medium, Tim. So I do think, your question was, are is this kind of a similar thing? Can you take me there? I cannot. So Shopko went bankrupt, I think, or they closed all the stores down for whatever reason. And they used to have they had the best collection of like Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas stuff. Not even online. Oh, where to get these ones? I'll see if they still have them. I don't know if they do. But yeah, they had the best Christmas decor. I still like most of my Christmas decorations are from there. Now I had to like switch, and I don't like switching. I'm very loyal when it comes down to that. But yeah, it was really difficult. It was a difficult time in my life. Difficult time when, yeah, difficult time when Shopko went away. Very sad. All right. Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate that. Well, thank you guys for joining today. I am at 12%, so I probably should charge my phone and go get something to drink. I'm thirsty, and then I got to get back to work, but I just wanted to come on and do a quick, it's an hour. Oh my gosh. A quick live in between some of the recordings that I was doing today. I hope you guys are doing fantastic and having a great long holiday weekend here in America. I think I can. I know I'm a little bit of a workaholic. I'm taking the day off tomorrow. Taking the day off tomorrow. I'm gonna go huckleberry picking. You guys have a great evening. If I get back and I have some time tomorrow and I'm feeling up for it because I'm going berry picking, I might do another live with you guys. But I hope that you guys have a wonderful evening. It was great to chat with you. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. I always love it. And yeah, I'll take pics. If you're not following me on my other channels, I have Facebook. I'm not on TikTok as much, but I do go on Facebook quite a bit. So Facebook and Substack has been really fun. Obviously, YouTube is one of my favorite places to be, and then LinkedIn as well. So send you some. We'll see if they're good. It's I think they should be. I think they're kind of everywhere, but sometimes it gets really hot. Send me some video chat. Well, I might come on tomorrow and do another live chat. But anyways, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for joining me. Go to my profile. Go check out my Substack and see all about the elements that have been included into the sigil that I've created. It's really resonant and symbolic of where I'm going. And I'm so grateful that you guys are here and listening. I really appreciate that. Attention is the greatest currency. And so the fact that you guys are here, that you've liked, you've subscribed, I really appreciate that. So thank you so much. All right. Bye, guys. Good night.